Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first financial forum of the year. We're here today, as always, with Brian from Dunhill Financial and Adrian and Patty from the Adrian Leeds Group. And we're also lucky enough to be joined by two very special guests, Jonathan Hadida and Daniel Tostado. Before we begin, though, just bear with me because we have to do a disclaimer. So, Dunhill Financial is a registered investment advisor. The information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and/or tax professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. With that out of the way, why don't you take the lead, Adrian?
Wait. It's not just educational purposes, it's entertainment purposes when we have Jonathan and Daniel here.
I'm so
We
sorry.
can't forget consult with an immigration or real estate professional as well. Sorry to
Are you
interrupt there, Tom.
stealing my
All you,
intro,
Adrian.
Brian?
This is gonna set the precedence for today. We're just gonna talk over each other, right?
Okay, so can I welcome everyone to the North American Expats in France Quarterly Financial Forum. This is the first quarter. We're doing this already with a lot of humor. Today is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to talk about living, working, and investing in France the easy way. So we have all of our experts on here. Patty Sadoskus, who's with the Adrian Leeds Group, is going to monitor your questions. Please put them in the Q&A, not in the chat, if you don't mind, because we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. And Brian Dunhill from Dunhill Financial is going to open today's forum with a bit of information about. Take it away, Brian.
Oh, thank you, Adrian. Normally we talk about the entire economy, but right now the entire economy revolves around one thing, and that's Iran. And the most important thing that really revolves around that is the dollar-euro exchange rate. So I'm just going to spend this little bit of time at the beginning to talk about that because that's going to affect a lot of us. So as a quick reminder, over the last 50 years, essentially, we normally have 10 to 15-year periods of dollar strength, dollar weakness. Until the Trump administration came in, essentially, we had 15 years worth of dollar strength. So in other words, if we kept our money in dollars and lived on euros, we were doing much better. The Trump administration has tried to bring in weakness of the US dollar and did a mighty good job in the first year. We can include all the political satire on why that is, whether it's not making America great or whether it's an orchestrated plan, but he was able to devalue the dollar. That all changed last week with Trump's war in Iran. Jeez.
Which
Nice
we're
little slip
talking
there
about.
from the George W. years. With the war in Iran, essentially all that's really affecting is the amount of oil that's going through the Strait of Hormuz, which is a good 25% of the world's oil. And where this is really changing currencies is because essentially the United States is a net exporter of oil and Europe is a net importer of oil. So we saw oil prices at $72 prior to the invasion into Iran. It jumped up to $100 a barrel. Essentially, the White House leaked out a tweet or an X, whatever you want to call it these days, basically stating that they'd escorted a tanker through the Strait of Hormuz. They deleted it, and now they're denying actually sending that, which is making it very apparent that they're trying to keep oil prices down, even if they have to lie. It's such a surprise with the Trump administration. I thought they were straightforward and honest, but turns out they've leaked out some misconceptions that have pushed oil prices back down to 80, and now as it's come out that that's a lie, we're back up to 90. This is going to be the main concentration around where currencies are going to go, and it's basically caused a flight to safety, i.e., people go back to the safest currencies when they get scared, and that's been the US dollar. This is a great opportunity because Like I said, historically, over the longer term, we have 10 to 15 years of dollar weakness when it gets started. So make sure to take this opportunity because if you haven't heard the acronym from the Financial Times, the taco trade is what everything's been under this administration. Trump always chickens out. So, what does that mean? He's entered to Iran probably without much of a plan. Now, all of a sudden, we're 13 days into the invasion, and he'll probably back off some. What are we hearing the rhetoric of? They're going to get the Kurds to enter as foot soldiers. Will that happen? We don't know. It could be, but they could just get massacred in that same type of level. What we're not talking about is a full-scale U.S. invasion or such. Notice that number that Trump is chickening out from finishing that actual job and backing off because the markets are moving in that way. The more he backs up from Iran, essentially, the more the dollar will go back down to those relative levels, giving us euro strength once again. Can't tell you whether that's days, weeks, months, but essentially, what I can tell you is longer term, the dollar
So,
will sink.
so Brian, I'm in the process of purchasing a property,
Are
and
you? I didn't know this.
not only know,
Where is it?
where is it? It's in Paris. And I have, working with Money Corp, I've set up an automatic transfer so that when it hits $1.15, it automatically does the buy for me, does the conversion, which I didn't realize I could do. That's really cool. But so when do you think it's going to hit? I know it should hit 115 soon, I hope.
That is more of a guess because we're playing with geopolitics from the Trump administration. So I don't want to play the guesswork of exactly where it's going to hit on those types of moves. But limit orders are great strategic ways to place those orders at the limit that you want to have them. Forward contracts also work. Yours is too short of a
Well,
perimeter to
yeah,
one.
but yeah, I don't need a forward contract because that means I'm sitting with it and you pay a higher rate on a forward contract.
Absolutely. That would be somebody
Right.
that wants to essentially buy into the rate, say, at these
Right.
prices for next year, and they pay a little bit
But
of commission to do
I mean,
so.
I did the math on it and literally 1 penny difference, okay, means $3,700 difference,
Absolutely.
which is, huge, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
These
okay.
this is why it's such the important topic of if you're moving over to France, this is the time to make switches to your US bonds, to European bonds, to buy forward contracts, to put in limit orders,
Right. Transfer money
really
over.
dig
Right.
into that currency aspect. That's why we're not going to just break down the entire marketplace. Currencies is the name of the game right now.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I guess let's turn this over to Daniel Tostado, immigration attorney, expert on visas. You want to talk to everybody about how they should go about getting their visas and what kinds of visas?
Absolutely. So, I suppose I'd like to cover two different major aspects of the move to France. What's the right visa for me, and nationality. So when I think about the move here to France, I think about the core question that we're starting with is what's the right visa? For the crowds that follow Adrian, it's often the visitor visa. That's usually like the go-to visa. I'd say there's about four different types of visas that one can essentially group all the visas into. There's 30 different kinds for basic families. The visitor visa, student visa, work as an entrepreneur or as an employee, or family-based if you've got a spouse that's French or European. Um, a smidge of your clients are in that latter category, but if you're in it, you already know that you're in that specific category. Otherwise, my clients are usually picking between, am I moving to France to be on the visitor visa, or am I moving here to France to be on potentially the entrepreneur side of things? Um, and one of the things that I really want to emphasize, I was at the International Living conference last year, and I was on a panel with lawyers from Spain, Portugal, Greece, Italy, France, and so forth. And I was able to really sell France in a manner that they couldn't sell their own countries, like Spain or Italy. They're like, oh yeah, it'll take a year and a half to get the visa. Like, so you really have to be, put on your pants and be ready to, have that entrepreneurial, like adventurous spirit. And I'm like, honestly, it takes like 2 weeks to book the appointment. It takes the French consulate 8 days to approve the visitor visa. So, if and when a certain 47th president does that next big thing and you want to get out of America fast, the French visa is one of the quickest ways to make your move over to Europe.
Patty and I discovered the same thing when we were at International Living Conference the year before, when everyone was talking about visas. We were going, no contest.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was
I mean,
just
and it's
no
not my field to
contest.
say it about the tax implications, but the Franco-American tax treaty is the best one out of all the various tax treaties as well. Compared to if you're moving to Italy and they're trying to tax your retirement pension, and in France they don't do that. So, in terms of the process, like how does it actually go? How does one go about getting a visa? We go through their third-party service providers. We show up in one of the 10 filing locations: Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, Chicago, Atlanta, Miami, Boston, New York, or DC. Memorized them all and was able to perform them. And in the past 12 months, they shifted their service provider. It used to be VFS and cost 30 euros. Now they shifted to TLS. It's worse and it costs 230 euros. And the worst of all is the TLS in Atlanta. We can talk about that more offline, but they're asked for things that aren't even on the checklist. So sometimes you got to stick to your guns when you put together the case file. Say either it was prepared by an immigration lawyer or the law firm, or that you know that this is the right documents, and have the French consulate in DC, who was the real decision maker, give them the chance to approve it. Because otherwise, the TLS will try to pre-refuse your thing by not letting you submit it, and that could be a
So
real
you're
hassle.
saying the Atlanta office happens to be a bit rogue?
Yeah, yeah. And the thing about TLS is they're not even French. You're not going to hear me say very nice things about TLS right now. For the consulate, I've got nothing but full love and respect, right? Um, and so then what I like about the system, when I moved to France in 2016, you would file at the specific consulate. I filed out of the LA consulate, and everything was disparate. The LA might be faster than New York. New York, you couldn't get appointments. How fast are they? What's the processing approval rates? This way, it's very standardized and centralized. The French consulate in DC is not looking to say no. If you could put together a good, well-constructed case file, it's pass fail, and if you've got the right kinds of documentation, they're more than happy to say yes. One of the things that drives me wild is my inbox when a person's writing saying, my mother was born in France in 1946. She moved to America in 1956. She's very French. I'm very French. I'm also 63 years old. How can I get the French citizenship? France is not looking to give out citizenship by descent, unlike a lot of other European countries. But France is very inclined to give visas to people, to North Americans coming over here to France. So one of the things I really want to emphasize is the doability of this whole thing. Um,
Okay.
and in terms of the move, so let's say you get the visa sticker in your passport, you come over here to France to live your best French life, which is the name of my new podcast that I've launched over the past couple of weeks, that I'll have everyone on this panel at some point be on it. That It's just a short amount of formalities. Once you get here, you have to validate the visa online. You have to go to a medical checkup where they take an X-ray of your chest to make sure that you're not an immigrant bringing in tuberculosis. And then you're basically good for that first year. And then at the year marker, when it's up, about 4 months before it expires, it's time to file the renewal. And they've moved that online, thank goodness, which creates more accountability. Um, and so for the visitor visa, you're basically renewing it in, year out for 5 years. And we can talk about tax residency in a second, but they want you to become a tax resident for that, and I encourage tax residency. And after 5 years of being here, you can get the 10-year card, which is great because it gives you the full authorization to work in France in any manner whatsoever.
That's
And
not automatic though, is it?
it's not automatic, it's discretionary, but there's no reason for them to, thank you, Brian. There's no reason for them to say no. Sometimes they're looking to say no, sometimes they can be kind of grumpy. You might find a bum agent at the prefecture, but
Daniel, they made me renew my visa for 10 years, every year
mhm.
for 10 years. Every year I asked for the carte de résident, and every year they told me no. Now, this is 30 years ago.
Voila, I was in not even in law school at that point in time, so I couldn't have been brought on to help you
I'm
out.
sorry, yes.
I would have
And
been
I didn't
immigration
even
wunderkind at that point in
I
time.
didn't even think to get an attorney at the time. I was such an idiot. I was just here and doing my usual renewals, and I didn't really care as long as I still got my visa renewed. It really didn't matter that much.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And so sometimes people get trapped up in, I think I qualify for the 10-year card. Why did I not get it? They are looking for tax returns. They are looking for what had been a level of A2 French. As of January this year, it shifted to B1, so intermediate French. And then as of January of this year, they've rolled out a new civic exam, which we did a test run of with two of our lawyers in
A
the
civic
firm.
exam?
Yeah, civic exam. It's a
So you
multiple
have to study
choice.
the livret de citoyen?
Yeah, leave kind of 20 is probably one of the best ways to study for it. Um, and it's a honestly, it wasn't too onerous. So let me copy and paste the
Okay, but
video.
when you're talking about tax returns, that had to do with the carte de résident, not the visitor visa, because the visitor visa they don't ask for tax returns, right?
No, for year in, year out renewals of the visitor visa, they're not asking for tax returns. It's when you're going for that 10-year card.
Right. Okay.
Right. I shared it here because I can't figure out how to share it with two of them all.
Because you have to remember, Adrian, when you're going for the 10-year card is the equivalent of a green card. So you
Right.
have to theoretically at that point show that you are here. Whereas the long stay visitor visa, more than anything else, is simply a right to come in and out of France as you please. There's a difference between the long stay visitor and the 10-year card. 10-year
Right.
card is I'm planted my flag, I'm here. Visitor visas, I'm gonna come check it out. Say Malo is kind of cool. Let me see if I like it.
Well, I want to actually, yeah, thank you, Jonathan, because I get asked very often. People have this idea that once they get their visa, they can't leave the country. It's like, well, what happens? I have a wedding to go to. I can't leave the country. And I go, no, of course you're not imprisoned here. I mean, you can go in and out. Because there's really no requirement, right, Daniel? I mean, once they have a
No,
visitor visa,
and I'm
they
really
can
not
leave.
precious about that. What I like to say is that the French prefecture is not talking with the consulate, is not talking with Border Patrol, is not talking with URSSAF, which is French Social Security, is not talking with the French healthcare authorities, is not talking with the tax authorities. No one besides the tax authorities and the healthcare authorities are talking. Everyone else is on their own islands. That's kind of how the French government functions. And so you entering and exiting the country is a French Border Patrol issue. And they see a visa that's validly issued for a
That's all
year
they care
that lets
about.
you come and go entrée multiple,
Right.
multiple entry. So they have
Right.
absolutely no problem with it. And the prefecture is not even aware that you're leaving and going.
I call between the government agencies les petits chemins, the little pathways between the government agencies, because if you get really clever, you can live between them. You can live on the petit chemin,
And as everyone's lawyer in the room, I'm here to advise you on le juste chemin, to put you on the right way.
on the right path. Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Uh-huh. Okay. You have anything else you want to add before we
Yeah, so naturalization is very much a possibility, and France, again, is not looking to say no. They did get slightly stricter in 2025. So they're saying now 5 years of presence is a general rule, 5 years of working in France. And that
Mm.
was been the shift up. They wanted you to work more in France. They think that's a Frenchifying experience. The level of French has shifted up to B2, so advanced intermediate. And they
I
want to
wait,
have
when
your
I took the test, I think it was B1. Now it's
that's
B2.
right, yeah. And so you're grandfathered in or grandmothered in, as you like, into the prior standard. And that the rule of thumb is have the center of your economic and familial life in France. So job in France, spouse in France, minor children in France. And if you meet these criteria, they're not looking to say no. They can give you the citizenship. They gave it to me. And now I have my Franco-American life. I don't have to give up my US citizenship. I've been
Yet.
able to transmit it on to my son. So
Oh,
there's
don't say that, Adrian. It's only a bill. We all remember Schoolhouse Rocks. It's only a bill.
So Daniel, let me ask the question that a lot of our clients ask. 65-year-old coming abroad wants to change to French citizenship. Can they still get a citizenship, or is it completely no chance?
I have so much to say to you. So, The Ministry of the Interior, it was a grumpy man named Bruno Retailleau. He is no longer in that role. He said that you have to be working in France for 5 years, and previously retirees could try for citizenship. And the way it worked in our firm in the past was we filed for one, they got a refusal, we appealed it, we won the appeal because we cited a governmental memo from 2000 that said that it was allowed. As of 2025, our best interpretation is that they're switching the script so that if you never ever worked in France, then you were never Frenchified in that manner. You never inserted yourself into the French labor market, and so as such, it's currently a no. There was one senator who raised an issue with this. She took issue with this last month, saying, I think she had a lot of American retirees or British retirees that were upset with this, saying, "What are we doing holding out against these retirees?" So I wrote to that senator last month, and she wrote back thanking me for her support. I think it's very fine for a person to retire to France. And how can they hold us to the standard of you must be working in France in order to qualify for naturalization if you're not working anywhere? If they have exceptions for stay-at-home parents, exceptions for people who are handicapped, who are not incapable of working, retirees, why are we not putting them in the same category of people who are not on the working market? Therefore, we should
Good
not be
argument.
discriminating against them.
Right.
Because the logic behind this in the past was it would be age discrimination for us to say, because you're of a retirement age, we're not going to naturalize you. So that was one of the grounds by which I would say there's no obstacle for a retiree filing for naturalization. So we'll see. One fine day, it could come back on the table. It's not currently on the table. The 10-year card looks and feels like naturalization in the day-to-day. You have the right to come and go as you please, work as you please. You can move abroad for up to 3 years, move back to France, maintain your
The only
status,
difference is voting.
voting, and getting on the good line at the airport. And we only vote like once every 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, because, yeah, truly. But
Yeah.
there's something to be said for just holding a French passport.
Yeah, I think you've got a permanent sense of belonging. You feel like you belong. For
Right.
any future spouse or minor children, you can pass on your French citizenship. Yeah, like look at me. I'm actually involved. I'm on the political list of one of the two parties running for mayor. I'm not the mayoral candidate. I'm farther down on the list.
I wish
But
you were.
I'd be
Okay,
too
'cause I
busy for
don't
you,
like
Adrian, if
any
I
of
was
the
mayor all of a
candidates so
sudden.
far.
I
Okay.
wouldn't have any time for you anymore. Um, but yeah, like the fact that I can live in a county and a community and engage in it politically is an absolute treat. And I feel like I'm allowed to do so because I've become French.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's all I got to say about that immigration.
I'm enjoying some of these questions on what you have to answer to become a French citizen. Who was Napoleon Bonaparte? Is that really one of the questions?
Well, on the new civics exam, they have multiple
oh
choice. They ask
yeah.
you the question, but for this to study off it, but then they don't tell you what the answers are. And sometimes the questions is finishing the sentence, like, laïcité in the school means, and that's the test prep question that's published on the French governmental website. You're like, well, how would I know how to study for this? Like, that's a very open-ended prompt of a question. So,
Yeah, they
So
are
is
looking, they do look for your opinions on things, not just to answer the questions like a
yeah,
multiple
and I
choice.
don't love that because then it starts to get a little bit off script, and I think they go a little bit harder on Muslim and Muslim women than they do on other parties filing for naturalization. But they might ask you, like, one of my friends got asked, "What is your position on, abortion here in France?" I was like, "That's a
Uh,
big,
yeah,
hot
that's
button
right.
issue.
How do you
Like,
feel about that?
reasonable minds might have different answers based on personal beliefs."
Well, I had so much fun in my interview,
That's because you're an
honestly.
all-star, Adrian.
But that's because what?
You're an all-star, so you
Oh,
know France in and out. You know
no,
La France
well,
profonde.
no, I had to hey, I had to study. Okay. I had to study to make sure, but no, but I had a lot of fun in the interview because all I did was relate the answers to what I've done in my life in France to show that that I do have a real presence here and I know what's going on, rather than just being able to, tell them who Jeanne d'Arc was or Charles de Gaulle or Napoleon or whatever. So, but
So
anyway, I'm
coming
fingers
back to
crossed.
citizenship for a second, Daniel.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Okay, so I've got Bob Smith. Bob Smith wants to apply for citizenship in Montpellier
Yes.
versus Bob Smith wants to apply in Paris. Is there really a difference between the two?
Oh
Big
yeah.
time. So there's 95 prefectures in mainland France, and I've probably got my own internal ranking of all 95 of them. I say that Paris is the least worst prefecture in the sense that they're most likely to reply to your emails and have a reasonable processing time. Nice and basically anything across the south of France can take 4 years for naturalization, and that includes Montpellier, Vaucluse, Var, Alpes-Maritimes, and even in Paris region, but not Paris proper, Nanterre, the 92, they can take 4 years for naturalization. I filed for naturalization in the 93, which does not always have a good reputation, and I got it in 20 months. So
Okay, so the trick is to you start out in Paris, you get your visa, then you move to Nice.
you get naturalized in Paris, and then you
Right,
explore the vast richness
right.
of
Then you go wherever.
French.
So you have to stay in Paris for the full time that you're getting naturalized?
Well, wherever you want to get naturalized, because you have permission to file for naturalization wherever you want to file it from. But stay in that département for the duration of your naturalization. Because the one thing you don't want to do is start moving département in the middle of it, because then France loves this question of jurisdictional qualification. They call that compétence. They say, okay, well, that's no longer under my umbrella, so I'm going to pass the baton over to, I don't know what, Montpellier. And then Montpellier says, we never got the dossier. Check in with Nice. And then you're like,
You're lost in the system.
I've learned how to say limbo state in French. It's dans les limbes. You can be lost in French administration, and that's not my goal for you. So pick where you want to be.
Okay,
Make sure your address on the back of your card is your current address, and then file for naturalization there, and then stick it out till you get citizenship.
got it. So another question. So, where you're located in Annecy, as we all know, 90% of people who work in Annecy want to work in Switzerland. So, for the people in Annecy who drive across the Swiss border and work in Switzerland, can they still naturalize if they're working for 5 years in Europe, but it's in Switzerland?
No, because we go back to that initial framing that I gave. You have to have the center of your economic and familial interest in France. So if your job is in the UN over the Swiss border, that's a pull factor. And France is very afraid of pull factors. They have such a precious opinion of what does it mean to become French that they want you to have all of your eggs in the French basket. If you're making more money on the US side, but you work here, but you're still making a mountain of money on the US side, they're going to say, well, Monsieur, Madame, you're just going to go back to your money making ways as soon as we give you the citizenship. So that's why I want my clients to have what I call 2 feet firmly planted in France, not 1 foot in France, 1 foot out of France. Your question earlier about the visitor visa and how you framed it, the word visitor it kind of sounds like tourism. It's not tourism. It's you could be in a visitor visa for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
But depending on how you approach fiscal residency, it's and for my best interpretation of French immigration law, having a visa does not automatically trigger fiscal residency. It's the multifactorial test that you could teach us about that triggers fiscal residency. How many days are you spending in France?
That is the
Exactly. So let's talk
perfect
about
intro to
residency.
Jonathan, if you ask me.
Let's talk about residency for a bit because this is a main thing and this is a big factor. And one of our participants, and I'm not going to say his name, but one of our participants who's waiting for an email from me who's going to get it later today. We have an open question. Is he a tax resident? Tax residency and VLSTS are not the same thing. The fact that you get a VLSTS does not mean you're a tax resident. Now, whether or not you're a tax resident, we first look at the French internal domestic law. And French internal domestic law is actually relatively gray. Go figure. And guess what, folks? It depends. Because, in tax law, if I don't say it depends 10 times in a presentation, Brian Dunhill makes me have to pay for lunch every time. So we're not going to do it. We're going to make sure that
I was gonna
I
have you
don't
pay
have
for
to pay
lunch
for lunch.
anyways.
Yeah, exactly. Fair enough. Well,
I was gonna have Brian pay for lunch, actually.
I'm gonna tell you. I invited Brian Dunhill to come for dinner at my house. Then I invited Brian Dunhill to come for lunch at my house, and I invited him for breakfast. He turned me down every time. Deeply hurtful and disappointing. Now back to residency. French tax residency. When we look at it from a French perspective, we look first and foremost under Article 4B of the French Tax Code. It's the person's foyer or principal place of abode. Now, foyer is the place that you habitually live. So basically, it's the place where you sit down and you have dinner. So very shortly, Adrian's foyer is going to change to another home. It comes down to where does your family sit and have dinner. If your family sits and has dinner in France, there's a chance that from a French internal law perspective, you are a French resident. If you don't have, if you're not certain, you then look at where's your principal place of abode. Where do you spend most of your time as a family? If that's still not clear, we look at where do you work. Are you working in France? Do you have a job at the McDonald's on the Champs-Elysees? Do you have a job on the McDonald's on that shopping street in Nice that everyone always goes to when they want to go to Etoile? Because Etoile has the best donut place. Sorry, Adrian. Every time I go to Nice, I have to go to Etoile for the donuts, and it's all because your area is far too complicated to park. But basically, we have to look at where do you have a professional activity. So if you have a professional activity in France, you're a resident from a French perspective.
Who determines this though, John?
Adrian, the determination is done by you. You can determine it first and
Right.
foremost.
It's a decision you make, right, when you go to file.
It's a decision you make when you go to file, but there's
Yeah.
a risk. The risk is if you take the position that you're not a resident and the French authorities believe that you are a resident, they can come back and ask you to file a tax return and potentially tax you and include interest and penalties on you. Additionally, as an American, now Daniel said it, but he missed the key word. So, Brian, are you ready for this? France U.S. tax treaty is the bee's knees for American retirees. Now, just to be clear, if
I
anybody
saved it
wants
for
to
you.
know
I didn't
more,
want to take your catchphrase.
no, thank you. But if anybody wants to know more about the strategy about why France is so great, Chapter 3 of Borderless Living, an Amazon bestseller, talks all about the French tax strategy. So when we look at it from a U.S.-French perspective, the U.S.-French tax treaty makes it that U.S. source investment income, interest, dividends, capital gains, U.S. source pension income, U.S. source retirement income, it's not taxable in France. So as an American citizen, do you really have a reason not to file as a resident? Maybe. It depends. That is why we have consultations. One second, Daniel. It depends, and that's why we have consultations. And that's why I jump up and down and tell people, you need to talk to someone before, because you come to France and you become a tax resident. Cool, you won't pay income tax, but you have a trust. You have two trusts. You're a trustee. Well, shoot, folks, you just have a trust filing requirement. You want to give a gift to your daughter who lives in America. Well, shoot, you do it when you're a French tax resident. You have a gift tax filing and an inheritance filing. Long story short, there are a multitude of little factors, and everybody's case is different. And we want to look at your case specifically. And again, here I am doing my best sales technique when I'm not trying to be a sales huckster, but
really
I'm looking like one.
I have a question for you, John.
Shoot, Adrian.
Okay, take a deep breath. I have a question here. So let's just say that, I've got a client that's coming over to France, okay? But do they really have to do all of that before they leave?
Absolutely.
No, because.
No, there's no.
Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. Because let's say they're coming in September. Okay, so the last few months of the year, for that year, they're not yet tax resident. They're not tax resident until the following year, correct?
It depends. So, under
Okay,
French
well,
law,
if they come in September and they've only been there 4 months, what do you mean no?
Sorry, Adrian.
What's
it depends.
That? No.
No. It really depends. So, first thing, we look at the internal law. We look at, do you have a home? If you have a home in a rental apartment in France, you're a French resident from the French domestic law. We then look at the treaty. The first question under the treaty is, do you have a place of abode available to you in both countries? Do you have a permanent home available to you in both countries? If the answer is, I have no kids, I have no family members, I have sold my house in Florida and I moved to France, well, shoot, you're a French tax resident. Irrespective
even if they were only there for a couple of months for the year?
So, Adrian, I could move to France on the last day of the year with my daughter into a home that I buy from you, right? And because I have a company in France, that's where my center of influence becomes, I could be there for one day and I could be tax resident in France by definition. It's that subjective element of where you lay your head and where you do your work. And the key word in that whole sentence is the subjective element. So it's not as straightforward as I spent this many days. That's the easiest way to interpret it when your situation is extremely simple. But if your life gets a little bit more complex, then it goes back to Jonathan's tale of it depends. But I've got to interrupt that conversation to ask a really important question. You stuck me on Nice donuts. And now I'm trying
Yeah,
to Google it, and there's 10 different places. But are these beignets or are these like proper American donuts? Like this is the
American Donuts. So in Nice Étoile, Nice Étoile being the big shopping center, at the bottom of Nice Étoile, on the ground floor, they have a donut place. It is my son's absolute favorite donut place. I'll find the name between now and
We're
shortly.
talking
But
about donuts?
Bone Shaker Donuts
Adrian,
in
have
Paris
you
is the
been to
best
Nice?
one for Paris. And then
No, no,
Bestie's
no.
Bakery.
Paris is good, but Nice's donuts are the best. Nice is again. Nice is okay. Antibes is much better. We all know that. But Nice has such good donuts in the bottom of Nice Étoile per my son. And again, I'll find the
Is
name.
it
But yes,
fluffy
it's American
donuts?
donut.
Is that what it's called?
What?
Fluffy
Donuts
donuts?
and
Hey,
donuts,
hey,
Brian. It's
hey,
called.
hey, 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 hey.
Okay, so
I think
Jonathan, I have a question for you. How does the French, I'm thinking of Shakira. So Shakira spent a little too much time in Spain. Bam. They came after her because she had triggered residency in their eyes. How do the French tax authorities know you exist?
That's the great question, bro, Daniel. And that's the big problem is that unfortunately, we don't know. We don't really know. It's AI. AI is going to be the big driver in the future going forward. It's Facebook posts. If you have a blog, Bob Smith in Paris, living the high life in Paris, well, guess what, Bob Smith? You've now done it. If you go on Facebook every day and post another picture of you with a donut from Donuts and Donuts in the Nice at 12 because they have just such a good selection, you will be a French tax resident. You'll be on their radar. So that the joke that I always make is, don't piss off someone in the line at your bakery because you never know if he or she is a tax inspector.
Hmm.
So there are ways.
Actually,
You have a rental contract.
the truth is your biggest risk is to be denounced by someone.
Well,
Potentially, but don't forget, you have a rental. Sorry, Brian, 1 second. You have a rental contract. You have this déclaration d'occupation now. So every renter has to put on to the government authority, say, hey, I have a renter in my property. It's Bob Smith. So there are more and more ways for them to find out. So again,
I was going to go with more of the simplicity of we've all known about FATCA starting in 2011, and that in a way for the Americans to find out about all these things globally. But what we have to remember is there's a reciprocation agreement in there that the French get all the information about Americans that have something to do with France. So if we make a declaration to America, the French can request that information from America. Do they? At this point in time, most governments don't talk well to each other internally, let alone cross-border.
Well, if
But
you were a major criminal, they would.
right, but there's going to be more and more of this sharing of activity. And since 2011, the French have the ability to get that information from the Americans. So we know that sharing is going to continue, et cetera, which basically means there's more opportunities for them to catch you, i.e., just because you got away with it for 10, 20 years doesn't mean you're going to continue to get away with it.
So again, when you're a U.S. citizen looking to move to France, you have to look at a myriad of factors. The first, again, you have to look at whether you're a resident. You have to look at whether or not it actually matters to you. Because again, under the treaty, it doesn't particularly matter. But again, there are cases where it's vague. Are you if you come in September and you're in Airbnb until January, did you really plant your flag in France? It's vague. So again, residency is a very tricky question without a solid answer. But again, depending on your situation, you may be better served just filing, getting in the system, and just going from there. Because again, the more tax returns you have, as Daniel told me years ago, the faster you can potentially get the 10-year residency card. Mm-hmm. So again, residency is an open question that we have to look at, but person by person. And unfortunately, there's no black and white answer in this one.
You guys, I just want you to note that we've only got about 20 minutes left. And so I think we want to open it to a Q&A, or Jonathan, you have more you want to add before we do that?
No, that's basically it. Again, that's why, again, we always recommend talking before coming, because you do not want to be surprised. We had an après-midi. The last après-midi actually had a very interesting moment. We talked about trust. We talked about how trusts from a French perspective are not great. And we had a U.S. advisor come in and basically jump up and down and basically say that's terrible advice. And she's absolutely correct. It's terrible advice if you're in Maricopa County. But if you're in 93 of Paris, France, it's not terrible advice. So again, pre-planning is imperative. That's why all of us do pre-consultations. But anywho,
Especially
Daniel, I
having
have a question about senior housing.
right.
Yeah.
Senior housing, okay? So I have clients, Bob and Jane Smith. They came across and they're older. They were worried about senior housing. Can they get senior housing on a visitor visa?
To my knowledge, yes, I've got one client that's pursuing that. I think it's an atypical arrangement because there's a certain amount of coming over to France on the visitor visa where you're having your second lease on life, where you're coming over to France to live that best French life, to have the moment where you're here. But the idea of it being in senior living, it's a little bit less that. Like if you're going to be in senior living, they're going to be speaking to you in French in the senior home. One of my housemates is Moshtaba from Iran, not the Ayatollah, d'ailleurs. And he works in that manner. He has his home language, he has French, he does not have any English. So if at a certain point, if there's senility that kicks in where you're only going to have English, might have a huge language gap in that EHPAD is what they call the retirement homes here.
It's interesting though about senior housing because if you're living in any one of the French cities where you don't need to live with them, you don't have to have a car, you can really live urban, you don't need senior housing. I mean, the reason that senior housing exists in the United States is because you're trapped without a car, in essence, in most places. I have a woman living next door to my daughter's apartment by herself in a studio apartment who's 103 years old. And the Social Security system sends someone to her every single day as part of
Mm.
French Social Security to take care of her. So basically, you can live here the rest of your life if you're in an urban environment and not in senior housing, because there's not really that much senior housing available in France.
Mm.
There is some, it exists, but not like in the US. It's
I've
not
got my oldest client is a 98-year-old, turning 99 this year, who lives independently with his wife. She's a younger wife, she's 86. And they live in La Ciotat. La Ciotat is one of those coastal towns not too far away from Marseille and Toulon. And yeah, he lives by himself. He's not in senior living.
right. But the
Big,
Social Security system also provides for that kind of care so that you don't have to go to senior housing.
and this piggybacks well into the question of healthcare and qualifying for it and paying for it. That there had been the system in place, universal coverage called PUMA,
Mhm.
where they take a look at how much your worldwide earnings are, and then they charge you a fixed rate, a variable rate based on how much your worldwide earnings are, and that calculation is called CSM. In the facts of the matter, they almost never send off a CSM to clients. I have one of my clients more recently got one, but he's not of retirement age. For my clients of retirement age, I'm seeing them almost never get them. So a deputy, François Gernigon, in the Assemblée nationale, put forth a proposal for a flat, like standard rate for every, visitor. And I met with him in December to discuss that. I told him I don't think that's necessary because CSM already exists. All France needs to do is just apply CSM.
They
Um,
they just need to enforce it.
yeah, but that his amendment did land in through the budget. It was never going to be him that decides the exact amount. Um, I don't know how they would go about calculating that. France likes to project French numbers onto other nationalities. If you're going for the long stay visitor visa, they want to see that you've got money coming your way of at least 17,000 euros, which is corresponding to French minimum wage net. If you're going for the entrepreneur visa, they want to see 22,000 euros, which is French minimum wage brut. These are very low numbers for Americans. So if they're projecting how much they think we need to contribute into French healthcare, maybe it's going to be in the low thousands.
Yeah, the main thing to remember about this CSM Puma thing is that CSM Puma only applies if you have investment income over a certain threshold. So it does not apply to your pension. It does not apply to your IRA distributions. It applies to your investment income, your interest, your dividends, your capital gains. It applies to your rental income, but not your pensions. I'm making that abundantly clear. And it is only if your investment income is over a certain threshold, which depends on your filing status, so 24,000 or 48,000. ish numbers close enough. It's 6.5% on the investment income over that threshold. Okay. And
Oh,
as
so
Daniel
it's not
said,
really, so it could be almost nothing.
it could be almost nothing, and it goes up to a ceiling of 370 some odd thousand. Basically, for a married couple, the maximum CSM tax charge would be about 20,000 euro. Okay, but that's someone who's making a lot of
A
investment
lot of
in
money.
a lot of money. Now, again, the thing has been for years that French American people have been treated equivalent to European Swiss and have basically, for lack of better words, not fallen through the cracks, been treated equally to the European/Swiss. That has created an indifference, not indifference, has created a situation whereby, again, and this is one where I get riled up, Americans have never cheated the system. Americans were not cheating the system, and that was one of the big things when this came out, was that Americans are cheating the system. Absolutely, positively not. So the system was set up and Americans are following it. Now we're going to have this new additional charge. There was a question about whether this additional charge is going to take over Puma. The answer is none of us know, because the government still hasn't put in place the rules of the game yet. So we are waiting for the rules of the game. I gave an guesstimate at a presentation with Adrian a couple of weeks ago. Adrian shot me down, so I'm not going to give an guesstimate. Long story short, it's going to be a number. It's not going to be anywhere close to what you're paying Aetna, Cigna, or whatever in the US, but it's going to be a number. And it will be separate from your tax return. But we don't know what it's going to be at the present time. So we're going to find out, when we find out, trust me, Brian and Adrian
We'll all know. Yes. When we
we'll all
find
know
out,
it.
we'll
We'll
all
all
know.
be touting it. We'll all be putting it out because it's going to be it's incredibly important. We are
It'll
all
be big
waiting
news.
with bated breath.
And I just want to talk about good faith. I've never had a client that says, I want to get this for free. Everyone says, I'm
Never.
totally willing to pay into a system that I'm benefiting from. It sounds fair. Let's find that fair price and have
But
it
yeah,
pay through the
especially
healthcare
compared to
system.
what they're spending in the United States for healthcare.
Yeah,
I
Deja,
mean,
and
by comparison, it's a drop in
if
the
you're paying out
bucket.
of pocket to see a doctor and you're not even in the healthcare system, it's 30 euros. That's lower than some American copays. So, I mean, we're already comparing, apples to oranges here, but
We're
come
going
on.
to be doing that, by the way, on the next forum. We're going to be talking about cost of living.
Great.
It's on June 3rd. But let's answer some of these questions,
Jonathan,
Patty.
just a really quick follow-up. I'm
Okay.
assuming that since it's not a tax, there won't be any credit back to the American system in any way, shape, or form.
Doubtful.
So it doesn't fall in the tax tree.
It's
But we're
it's
not
just
having you have American health care. I don't need my clients to maintain their American Medicare and Medicaid once they move over here to France. When I go back to America, I take out a travel insurance because America is the most expensive healthcare system in the world. And so if I'm there for 1 month per year, I don't
Oh,
need to maintain a US consistent healthcare year-round coverage.
no, I did the same thing. I just take out a travel policy.
it depends on the net worth of somebody, because sometimes the payments into that system are a cheaper insurance than having to worry about it. Again, stealing Jonathan's line and Daniel's line, it depends. Sometimes it's worthwhile to pay in, sometimes, and a lot of times, yes, you can
Oh, I
always.
never use that line. I always tell clients exactly what the reality is.
We're gonna get ourselves in trouble here,
No, we're
Jonathan.
just gonna get Jonathan in trouble. That's I'm the line.
No, we're good.
Can we get
So
to the Q&A, please?
Yeah.
basically, in terms of being a tax resident, one of the reasons you may want to look at tax residency from a French perspective, and this is my way of answering Charles Robinson's question, Adrian. So I am looking at the Q&A, but I'm answering it this way. One of the reasons that you may not want to become a French tax resident is you may want to wait to sell your home in the US. Well, theoretically, if you put your home up for sale, after you come becoming a tax resident, you potentially could be subject to French capital gains tax on that sale, potentially. So that's an important criteria to look at. That's why I keep on saying facts and circumstances, everybody's different. But basically,
It's
if you've
really
got a
tough though, Jonathan, because a lot of people who are coming over, they really want to spend their year here before they go ahead and sell their home.
absolutely, and that's the big
There's a real, a logical reason for not doing that.
absolutely, and that's one of the things that you want to just again come with a clear mind before. and see. Because again, we had a case recently where the gentleman had a $4 million gain on his home, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to come to France. So we worked it out in terms of ensuring that he wouldn't become a tax resident yet. So he's going to come to France for a few months, go back to the States. We're
Right.
going to work it out because, again, he can travel. But again, everybody's facts and circumstances are different and every case is different. But yes, if you're a tax resident, your sale of home in America may be subject to tax in France. Okay.
And that's the only red flag that I truly raise to people. And it's more of a Jonathan thing, is to say the only thing that really makes Jonathan worried is when you sell your house. If you're selling before you move, you're probably in a good grace. If you're selling after you move, you're putting yourself in hot water. There might be a situation where you need to reestablish tax residency on the North American side in order to not be subject to French capital gains. But almost everything else can be a pardonable offense that we figure out how to pull off. That's the one thing is kind of hard to tweak.
And trusts. You have
Yes.
to
Well,
be
yeah.
careful about trust. And I'm putting trusts out there because I don't want anybody coming to me anymore saying, I didn't know having a trust is a problem in France. It could be a problem.
Can you
So
summarize
it's
in one sentence why trusts aren't good for moving here?
trusts are tricky. There are three different filings, well, two different filings of your trust, but the main issue with trusts is that there's now a court opinion whereby income distributed from a trust, and again, very weird, distributed from a trust may not benefit from the tax treaty, meaning that there may be double taxation. Long story short, it is very, very punitive potentially to come to France with a trust. So you want to
So
be
talk to
very, very,
Jonathan.
yeah, you should have a conversation before.
So what you should do is take the money out of the trust and buy a property in France.
There are a variety of things you could do, but you need to have a conversation. And this is really why, again, I know I'm coming off like a salesman here. Before. Because once you come to France, once you become a resident, it's like the book of life. The book of life closes every year. It closes and you're quote unquote stuck. So Daniel, I have a question. Oh no, actually no, I want to answer one more question. Someone asked a question about if you apply for the carte vitale, does that automatically make you a tax resident? The answer is no, but it's a flippin' fair point to say that you're becoming closer connection to France. Your ties are in France. So yes, if you apply for the carte vitale after 90 days, there's a chance you're a French resident. It's much more difficult to argue that you're not a French tax resident if after 90 days.
I certainly
Okay.
do know people though who have a carte vitale and aren't tax resident here, and they've been able to maintain their carte vitale.
They've gotten lucky.
What I would
But
prefer to them think about is you want to pick which approach you have. Are you 2 feet firmly planted in France? Are you 1 foot in France, 1 foot out of France? And I'm fine with both approaches, honestly. Just figure out how France wants to work for you. But if you are going to be 2 feet firmly planted in France, count on getting carte vitale and count on paying taxes in France. And if you want to be half your year in France, half your year in the US, talk with the accountant to make sure that on the fiscal residency you're not triggering it, but then stay on private insurance so that you're not flipping the switches that send signals to the French government. As I said earlier, the only two branches that do talk is the French tax authorities and the French healthcare authorities. I think they are plugged into each other. So that's where you want to be careful.
And healthcare insurance in France is certainly not expensive because healthcare is not expensive. So even private healthcare is not expensive.
Yep.
Right. Okay, let's get to some of these questions. Patty.
We've answered quite a few.
Okay, that's good.
Jonathan's done a great job of answering some of the questions. There are a couple others. I like this one. Is there an anticipated timeline by which the French government will decide the healthcare tax to non-EU residents? And since it is France, how long will it take to implement and enforce it after the law is finally passed?
Well, there's no way to answer that
How long is the
question.
piece of
I
string?
know. Yeah.
I compare it to the Brexit
Yes.
rollout. Brexit was voted in the UK in 2016, and then they started announcing as of 2019, then 2020, then 2021 when you're going to start filing for the post-Brexit status. The final cutoff was September 1st of 2021. You had to have filed for it. So that was like a 5-year gap between something happening and the rollout occurring. So I like to say that France is a slow-moving ship, and likes to self-impose deadlines. Like putting handcuffs on your own wrist, you can always take them off. There's no consequences for a self-imposed deadline. So things move slowly. The only thing we did pull off in 5 years was getting Notre Dame reconstructed. Macron promised, Macron delivered.
That
Yeah,
was pretty amazing, actually.
yeah.
Mhm.
I do
Mhm.
see one question about a private insurance too that we could recommend, and we have a couple of different brokers we recommend. And our number one broker is Fab Insurance. It's on our website. So our resources there. And these are people, with all of our resources, we vet them like you guys. We don't if we don't have experience with them, we don't recommend them. So, and they're all there on our site. Okay, so there's a question from someone who has a student visa. That's interesting.
What's the
So
question?
if
Whether
you're on
they're
a
tax
student,
resident or not, if they're on a student visa.
you have
Ah,
income? Do you have non-French bank accounts? Again, you have to look at your facts and circumstances. If you're, again, it really depends. But yeah, your life is probably in France. Your center of vital interest is probably in France. You could be a French tax resident at that juncture. But again, it really depends on your situation and what you have going on, because it really, we'd have to look at it. Again, it's, black and white is only good in the markets, as Brian says. He always tells me exactly what to do and where to go, where to go.
Don't talk
Um,
black and white. We talk red and green.
exactly.
Um, I think on the student status, it's like a big fish, small fish kind of thing. They're very much not thinking about students because oftentimes students forget to file because they didn't realize there should be filing taxes and they didn't earn anything, so the declaration would have said zero in any event. Um, it's good to be filing, it's good to start accruing tax residency, but if the tax document says zero, it's not really going to help you at any point in any event. Uh, they want you to be filing taxes. And then, of course, you look at the Franco-American tax treaty, you see, does it even apply? Are you paying here? Are you paying there? Most students are not working. You're not allowed to be an entrepreneur on student status. You are allowed to be a part-time employee up to 964 hours in a 12-month period. Um,
so they're paying taxes to France anyway by virtue of that.
Yeah, but you don't even start paying taxes until about the 11,000 euro marker. Below that, you're in the tax bucket of zero. So
Mm,
you might be earning 7,000 annually and then not being subject to any taxes on, not having
right.
to outpay income tax on that.
Okay. Patty, you see anything else?
Hang on, hang on. There was a question about, this is for Daniel. If you have dual citizenship, oh no, actually, Jonathan, if you have dual citizenship and are returning to France after decades in the US, are you considered a French resident because of the citizenship?
No, no. Again, it's your facts and circumstances
Yeah.
will dictate the case.
Right.
It's not like citizenship does
Citizenship
not
doesn't make you a
impact.
resident.
Yep, it won't change. It won't change anything. But again, if you decide to move to Nice and rent an apartment with Adrian next to Nice at 12, well, that's a good idea. But basically, you would become a resident at that point. But again, it depends.
Yeah. They're totally different ideas.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have to
So if
I find you have to compartmentalize everything here.
yeah,
Everything's in its own
Daniel,
separate little boxes.
Yeah,
If we have a EU spouse,
yeah.
what visa does the American spouse need to get?
The EU national doesn't need to do a single thing. The spouse of the EU national qualifies for the spouse of EU national residency permit. In French, membre de famille d'un citoyen UE. It's a good 5-year card. It was my last card before I became French because my wife is a lovely German. And it's up to 5 years. It's free to get at the prefecture. And it's the only category that you get locally in France. All the other 30 categories, you have to go get a visa first from the French consulate with the TLS and then make your way over here.
I have a question related to driving licenses.
Yeah.
Basically, the rule is that you have to get your French driving license within the first year of having your visa. But what if you don't? What if you're an EU citizen? What if you're EU, you have an EU passport, but you're moving to France? So how does that rule apply?
It's very, the French word is flou. So, like, it's very vague how a European moves to France because already within the Schengen area, it's open borders theoretically. So, there's no passport stamps, proof of entry, proof of exit within the Schengen area. And they presume for European moving to France that if you haven't yet knocked on the door of the town hall, the mairie, and said, I exist, I'm here, I'm in this location, then they presume that you've still been here for less than 90 days. And the only thing you have to do as a formality is knock on that door, say, I'm here. They say, yes, you are. And then you could vote in local and EU-wide elections, and they know how many heads to count for tax purposes. But for the EU national, it can be much more
Yeah,
vague.
but for the driving license, that means you have to go through the test and everything. You can't
I
exchange
think
your
they can
license.
exchange.
Depends if they've got a European one that's going to be exchangeable. There's only 18 states out of 50 that have an exchangeable driver's license. Nothing basically on the West Coast, all more on the East Coast and in the Midwest.
Okay, my daughter, okay, went to the trouble of establishing Florida residency in
Which
order to get
qualifies.
a Florida driving license, okay,
Yeah.
only to be told that she couldn't exchange it, that she'd
Oh,
have to apply.
yeah.
Okay, but
She's on a 10-year card. She
she
lives
has
here
she's
already.
on a
Oh
10-year
yeah.
card, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
she
the,
so she's like
so then there's an
she
yeah, so
has
you
to
either
go
sit for
through the
French
whole
behind the wheel and
process.
French driver's
Yeah.
ed, or there's one English language school in Paris region where you can do it at least in English. But yeah, I mean that's what I have to do. I have a California driver's license. I've got a lot of bikes, no car, but if I want to start driving, I'm gonna need to sit for the French driver's ed.
Yeah, I just thought it was like, but and it wasn't going to happen. And she
The
was
other
too
one
young
that
when she left here.
the one that also brings about problems is when you exchange a license and try to exchange it again. So I exchanged my California license for a Belgian license, and when I tried to exchange it to a UK license, they said I have to start all over again. And that sometimes happens in France because the only way that you can actually get the exchange license on an exchange license is to prove the documents that got the first license. Now, if you're like me
Geez.
and you got that first license 20 years ago, there's absolutely nowhere you're going to get those documents of the original application, et cetera, et cetera. So
You guys it's 8:01. It's
Oh.
for our time. We're a minute over. Do we want to take at least one last question before we sign off?
absolutely. Do you have one in mind?
You have one in mind, Patty?
We have one question this is about citizenship. If you're an American living in France on a long-term visa and your husband is American but lives and works in the US, is it possible to get citizenship? They've heard that if a spouse lives outside of France, that you can be denied.
Mm.
Adrian, I think one of your top sellers in Nice wrote that one.
Uh-huh. We have someone on staff that's got that problem.
Yeah, the answer is no. It's a pull factor, and they will refuse a naturalization application if your spouse is
Even
already
if
in
you're
France.
estranged from, let's say, I mean, there are a lot of people who are totally separated, but they've just never
Yeah, I'm not
divorced.
one to push too many divorces, but that could be a case where if you get a divorce, you can qualify for naturalization. If you're legally married but separated, you would not qualify for
Well, that's
naturalization.
what we have to tell her. She needs to just get divorced.
Would
Yeah,
that
but I like to
affect
cause
us getting
marriages, not divorces,
a
Adrian.
should
I'm the marriage king and the Pax king, not the divorce king.
should that affect though if you were applying for a 10-year residence card?
Zero impact. They don't look at
No.
it. You don't even have to have the
Yeah.
center of your economic interest in France for the 10-year card. You can be having a U.S. pension, divorce, alimony, disability from the New York firefighters and still qualify for the 10-year card.
Wow. Okay. Thank you everyone for participation in our first quarter forum. It was really been fun and interesting. Um, we did have one comment on the board that said we should stop yelling and not talk about donuts, but they don't realize that we just are here to have a lot of fun and to answer a lot of questions and get as much information out there as possible so that everybody can learn, right? As what they don't know, because they don't know what they don't know.
They
And
do not know. They do not know
they
what they do
don't know
not
what they
know.
don't know. No. And we know what they don't know.
Well
So,
played, Daniel. Well played, Daniel.
Thank you, Brian. All right.
okay, so thank you, everyone. We will be back here on June 3rd with our next forum for second quarter, and we're going to be talking about cost of living in France with me, actually. Yeah. So goodbye, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of day, and thanks again. This is being recorded. We will be posting it on our YouTube channel so you can watch it again and pass it off to your friends. Okay?
Thanks
Bye.
so much, Daniel, Patty,
Thanks a
Scott.
lot.
Bye,
Thank you. Cheers.
everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.